Welcome to another edition, and today we're going to look at some NBA and some matchups as the season is set to resume. The 2020 NBA schedule, the 12 most important games of the restarted regular season. What we're going to be looking at, the 2020 NBA season restart finally has its schedule. Each team will have 8 regular season games to help finalize playoff seeding, with the first 2 games starting on July 30th as the Utah Jazz face off versus the New Orleans Pelicans, followed by the LA Clippers versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Players and teams will have roughly 2 weeks to secure their playoff seeds while knocking off any rust ahead of the postseason. Here are the 12 games we can't wait to see when basketball returns July 30th. Intriguing matchup, New Orleans Pelicans versus Utah Jazz. That game will be July 30th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on TNT. The Jazz have the utmost confidence that Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell can successfully coexist as franchise cornerstones. But will there be any residual tension from Gobert's lack of concern for the novel coronavirus that preceded the news that he and Mitchell had both tested positive? And speaking of Gobert, Zion Williamson's trying to finish over and around him is a pretty exciting way to welcome back the NBA. Next up, Los Angeles Lakers versus the LA Clippers. That game also July the 30th, 9 p.m. Eastern on TNT. While the atmosphere in Orlando, Florida won't be the same as it would be at the Staples Center, the intensity between these rivals figures to remain high in their final regular season matchup. Though home court advantage is no longer part of the equation, both teams will need to address chemistry as they ramp up for a long playoff run. Can the Lakers replace Avery Bradley and find the same consistency they had before the stoppage? How do the Clippers look at full strength? And how will Doc balance the minutes on a deep roster? First thing we can say is, before we move forward, is that looking at the Clippers, especially one Kawhi Leonard, who is known for load management. Well, at this point, everybody should be load managed because the season abruptly came to a halt or a abrupt suspension or whatever you want to call it. So I think everybody's well rested. I don't think you should see any load management, no players taking any games off. And even though it's an abbreviated season, very short, and then you bouncing right into the playoffs, I think all games count. So I don't think you will see any resting up load management, and you're going to see a very healthy Clippers team. Question is, with the loss of Avery Bradley to the Lakers, there is talk picking up that there's the possibility you could see a J.R. Smith in a Lakers uniform. Nothing concrete, but the talk is building up steam. Next, we go to Portland Trail Blazers versus Memphis Grizzlies. That game will be July 31st, 4 p.m. Eastern on NBA TV. The race for the West 8th seed could come down to the fresh-faced Grizzlies against the playoff season Trailblazers, who were conference finalists last season. The point guard matchup, perennial All-Star Damian Lillard versus Rookie of the Year frontrunner Jay Morant, should be particularly fun. Lillard left the game because of a strained groin when these teams met on February 12th, and Morant's 20 points and 9 assists led the Grizzlies to a home victory. Boston Celtics versus Milwaukee Bucks, July 31st, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Giannis Antetokounmpo is fully recovered from an injury. That gave him some trouble prior to the suspension of the season. His first chance to knock off more than 3 months of rust will be against Celtics, a potential playoff foe with a 6.5 game lead over the second place Raptors. The Bucks can use the restart as a kind of preseason. The Celtics don't have that luxury, sitting at just 2.5 games in front of Miami as both teams try to avoid a showdown with the Bucks in the conference semifinals. Jason Tatum scored 28 or more points in 7 of his 9 games following the All-Star break and will look to pick up where he left off. Miami Heat versus Denver Nuggets, August the 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. This matchup will hopefully give us a look at Nuggets All-Star big man Nikola Jokic, who before the positive COVID-19 diagnosis earlier this week had lost 40 pounds and transformed his body during the league's hiatus. For Denver, it will be interesting to see what kind of lift Nuggets forward Michael Porter Jr. gives a team in need of another push behind Jokic and Jamal Murray. As for the Heat, this no-frills environment is made for Jimmy Butler to turn in some great performances. With Butler, Bam, Adebayo, and the playoff experience of trade deadline edition Andre Iguodala, the Heat have the ability and the confidence to make waves in the East. Milwaukee Bucks versus the Houston Rockets, August the 2nd, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. The passive-aggressive jabs exchanged by Houston's James Harden and Milwaukee's Giannis Antetokounmpo over the past year give this matchup a juicy subplot, but watching Harden attempt to figure out how to attack the league's premier defense will be the main attraction. Milwaukee's plan for guarding Harden, having his primary defender straddle his left hip, taking away his step-back jumper, and daring him to drive into the trees, has been successful. He has averaged 28 points on 34.8% shooting in the Rockets' 3 losses to the Bucks over the past 2 seasons. But Harden has refused to give Milwaukee credit for containing him, saying he simply missed shots. Memphis Grizzlies versus the New Orleans Pelicans, August the 3rd, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Rookie sensations and former AAU teammates Zion Williamson and Jay Morant have quickly established themselves as 2 of the NBA's most entertaining talents, and this rematch will be no exception. The fight for the West's last playoff seed has potential for high drama during the 8-game wrap-up of the regular season and a potential play-in scenario. Houston Rockets versus Los Angeles Lakers. That game will be August the 6th, 9 p.m. Eastern on TNT. Could the Rockets pose a threat to the West favorite Lakers? After acquiring Robert Covington at the trade deadline, Houston debuted its small ball lineup with a win at Staples Center the previous time these teams met. The micro lineup started out strong, but fatigue began to wear on the Rockets before the season was halted. The Clippers exploited the high mismatch by beating Houston on the boards. Will Frank Vogel take his co-tenant's lead and stick with his centers? Did the layoff give the Rockets enough time to recover? Let me just say this. When you're talking about the Rockets, you start with James Harden. And James Harden seems to exert so much energy during the regular season. By the time the postseason comes around, he's out of gas. If you look at his numbers, yeah, he might put up some impressive numbers during the playoffs, but his percentages come down. So with that being said, by such a long layoff, Houston could very well possibly be a threat because they will be very well rested. And you have a fresh leg James Harden who hasn't exerted so much energy during the regular season. So I think, me personally, I think that this Houston Rockets team, if you can get Westbrook and Harden not to be so ball dominant that the rest of the team just stands around and watches them do their thing, I think they could pose a threat to anybody in the West. Milwaukee Bucks versus the Toronto Raptors. That should be an interesting game. We're talking about the defending champions against an upstart team. August 10th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Will this be an Eastern Conference Finals preview for the second year in a row? The Raptors have kept on rolling without Kawhi Leonard as Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry, and a roster full of hard-nosed players get the chance to repeat as champs in this unique environment. The Bucks are 6.5 games clear of the Raptors in the East, but if Milwaukee wants to send an early message, it will get a chance to show that this year could be different. It will be interesting to see how hard Coach Mike Budenholzer decides to push his veteran roster as this group starts what it hopes will be the long stay at Disney. August 12th, we look at Raptors versus Philadelphia. Sixers come into the restart looking to script the kind of ending they expected they could achieve when the season started. Their play so far this season has been underwhelming, but Philadelphia heads into the bubble with a presumably healthy Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, along with the core of players who should be motivated to change the direction of the season. The Raptors come into the restart after some much needed rest, presumably healthy and ready to prove they can make another title run without Kawhi Leonard. Not only is this a rematch of last season's 7-game Eastern Conference semifinal, it's a meeting of two teams that feel they have a lot to prove in Orlando. Houston Rockets versus Philadelphia 76ers, August the 14th. The Rockets felt comfortable committing to small ball because the list of NBA big men who are threats to dominate in the low post is short. Fortunately for the 76ers, Joel Embiid is at the top of that list. Can the perimeter-oriented Rockets capitalize on forcing him out of his comfort zone as a rim protector enough to make up for the punishment Embiid will dish out down low? Embiid and Russell Westbrook, two of the league's most entertaining personalities, also have a trash-talking history that means there is always potential for fireworks when they meet. LA Clippers versus Oklahoma City Thunder. This is each team's final regular season game, so it could have significant implications for the West. We'll take a break right there. Okay, as I was leaving off, we were talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the LA Clippers. It says this is each team's final regular season game, so it could have significant implications for the West playoff bracket. Paul George and Shai Alexander, the marquee players who were traded for each other in a blockbuster deal last year, will face their former teams for the final time before the postseason. Then again, if the Clippers are locked into the number 2 seed, it wouldn't come as any surprise if they rest George and Kawhi Leonard in preparation for the playoffs. So there you have a look at some key matchups concerning the restart of the NBA leading into the playoffs. So the battle lines will be drawn and the games will begin. And my question is, how interested are you in seeing the restart of the NBA season? Or are you just going to wait to the playoffs and take it from there? I think each game that starts is a playoff game. So you won't see no days off. And think of the notion of resting a player, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, there's too much at stake. How do you feel about a champion being crowned out of this? And do you think a rookie of the year should actually be named, seeing that there wasn't a full season played, or do you think they should wait till they play a full season, then name a rookie of the year? My thoughts is, I think they should wait and play a full season before you name a rookie of the year. Likewise with player of the year as well, too, and MVP of the league. So those are my comments. Enjoy this